Hi, hello. Welcome to our garden here. And here you can see we have a 1,600 square foot garden. We are in zone 6 here, but we're on the border of zone 7, so we're in a nice place here in Maryland. And we got this property last year and began uh, kind of late into the season already. And so to just quickly go from having started with just simply grass being here, we chose to, I had a very limited amount of time. And so we got actually a trench cutter at Home Depot, I think. And we at least cut trenches, and that helped with the digging and speed up the process. But I didn't have any time to get any compost and I didn't have time to filter the soil quality. Okay, see if we can check my audio. You should be hearing me, I hope, by God's grace, and that you can see together here with me. A very poor soil, dry and sandy. Also does have some clay in it. It's even more poor up on the hill. This is actually the most fertile part of the garden. This is my very last section that I'm just completing. And I'm going to show you the technique that I've used for the entire garden. I'll do it by sections. And so once you see one section, you know how to do an entire garden of any size in rows. And we'll be doing something today called the double dig, or at least my modification of the double dig, where we'll be applying biblical principles to learn and the connection between the soil of our hearts and minds and how it was affected by sin, and God's plan to restore our minds back to rightness, and his plan to restore the soil of the land on the ground that was also cursed by sin. And we've been looking at the idea that there's a direct parallel between going on in the soil and what's going on in our minds, and that what we need to restore our mind back to rightness is the exact same thing we need to restore our ground back to rightness. Now, this was to be an object that God desired for us wherever we go. Applying these principles, talk about them as I show you what I'm doing, and most importantly, we know what to do. I not only apply the numbers in the scriptures, time, and I have a perfect God who does things right on time and in an orderly way, and actually our growing season, God gives us cycles. And so I've actually even applied biblical numbers to my garden, just because I feel you don't have to do that part. It's the biblical principle of amending the soil. I actually have 14 rows, 15 yards each, and I've been doing this in sections with 3 layers each. We're going to see, just like there's 3 parts of God's kingdom. Thinking to bring it back into harmony and rightness in these last days. Satan is also in 3 parts prophet to a principles of salvation, object left in the garden. So I've begun digging to save us a little bit of time, but I'll continue on. I'm just about to the end of my very last of the garden this year, so I'm just using this as a demonstration. Taking a spade, and we literally have done this right out of grass. The trench cutter we used last year has made the digging a little bit easier, but it was a very narrow row. The spade is wider than that, so we're expanding the row a little bit this year, and we're going to go deeper. as you'll see, as part of our double dig method. So we're actually digging out sections here with the spade, and I'm putting them in this milk crate, which I'm using as a sifter, we'll see. And then I have the 5-gallon buckets below in which the soil will go. That way we'll get out all, at least the big rocks and the roots and the grass and the other things that we don't want really in our garden. And then I actually also kind of trim it along the edge here as I'm going. I'm hoping you're seeing this all right. It seems like you are. I know the lighting conditions aren't ideal right now. The sun is sort of gotten behind the tree on us. But this is my last opportunity to do this right now, so I'm working on another garden. So at least you can understand the basic principles as I explain them, and hopefully kind of space and bringing the camera up a little bit closer as we go along so that you can see better. So now I've got a good amount here in my sifter, and then so I'm going to have to, you can kind of lift it up a little bit. And now I'm really going to shake this up. The soil's going through, and then all of the leftovers, the grass and the rocks and the roots, all goes in this extra bucket here. And I'll continue the process. I actually filled that whole bucket with the refuse, as it were, which we have a pile and we'll compost there and put to another use. But really transforming this garden here this year. It is a significant amount of labor involved, but that's good for us. That's God's purpose. Curse on the ground was for our sake, and the labor is good for our bodies and for our minds as we think on God, His goodness, and His principles. So, which we've talked about. So we're starting with the basic principle that the soil is actually a symbol of our mind, an object lesson of what's happened to our minds as a consequence of sin. And as soon as our first parents disobeyed, the curse on their minds that came as a result of choosing selfishness over unselfishness resulted in a curse on the ground, where the consequences of sin could be seen. And then also, God's methods for dealing with the consequences of our sin to bring us back into rightness could also be seen in an object lesson. So everything that we need to restore our minds, the scriptures tell us, is the exact same thing that we need to restore the soil. Taking it out again here. Doing all that refuse. That's all organic matter that can be composted. That would be in the way of the roots of our plants, so we don't want it there. Our buckets are getting pretty full. Good. We're taking out about a 5-gallon bucket per section or so of material, but we're putting in compost to replace it. The missing organic material. We got a nice whole truckload of compost here to help get the organic matter back in the soil that we really need. Step down a little bit more here for you. Just getting to the very end of the row section, I just wanted you to see this technique of sifting. Very beneficial. Takes up, makes the soil very loose and beautiful, perfect for new roots to develop. The plants or root vegetables uh, all find this soil a great improvement once we have shifted it. Easier to work with. And so we learn in the parable of the sower that the condition of the soil in the ground and the land is a symbol of the condition of our mind and our willingness to receive the word of God into our heart. And so well, we've seen that which Christ has foreordained as his means to restore our minds and our hearts back to rightness and oneness with him, the at-one-ment process, the atonement, through his great sacrifice for us, is the Lord. Nope. All right, welcome back. I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm outside here and relying on the Wi-Fi, and so I think I lost my connection temporarily. Hopefully it wasn't for too long. We'll continue on as we here in our garden. Still at the end of the row. I haven't actually added anything back in yet. And we're going to follow the biblical principles as we do. To complete the process of the double dig, though, first I will take my spade, shovel, and having now dug out a spadeful, threw it to the ground, I have this trench. Sorry, I moved the laptop a little bit farther away. It's a little bit harder to see, but I'll try to bring it up closer when I get up an opportunity. Okay. All right. I can still be explaining the process to you, and you can kind of see. And when it becomes critical to see better, I'll bring you up closer. But we have a trench here of about a spade's depth. Just edged it. And then what I want to do the quote double dig is we want to dig down more. So we remove the soil from the garden. Hey, do you have a neighbor here? Do you have do you ever get those seeds for the cilantro? I planted some regular cilantro, or that I had.
Just, they don't really have it around here.
Uh,
In the Latino supermarket, they have the cilantro itself,
okay.
but they don't have like seeds for it.
Well, if you ever find that some, let me know and we'll plant it.
Definitely. Thank you.
For sure. Blessings. Well, my neighbor here has a particular kind of cilantro that he really likes, and a little bit different from regular cilantro. Maybe Mexican or Spanish. And I would plant it, but he's been having trouble finding. He seems to be able to just buy it fresh, but not in seed. So we'll have to find a good source. There's a good object lesson that connecting with our neighbors is one of the most important things of actually having our for evangelistic purposes. So here I'm using a hoe to now go down another 6 or 8 inches and break up the soil deeper so that now my entire hole is more than a foot bottom. Big rocks, if I encounter them, like I just hit, It's actually much more rocky in other sections of the garden. But again, this at the bottom of the hill in a little bit of a mini floodplain, as it were, is by far the richest soil in the area in the garden. Anisha, please sit back. I'm recording, so just watch. I'm showing people how to do this. So there's one of our kids here, and he's very interested in what we're doing. Praise the Lord. Now, so having broken soil down deep, please step back, young sir. I'm going to take the hoe, and please step back.
Daddy, not a
Don't block the view. You can watch, but just don't block the view, Mr. Misha, okay? Thank you. So yes, it's not a hoe. This is a rake I'm using. I did use a hoe to break up the bottom of the soil. And now I'm just using a rake to get the bulk of the loose soil that didn't actually go in the bucket that was sifted. Don't have to get it all. That will actually fertilize that and keep it healthy. And now, having broken up the soil here at the bottom, the native soil, which has some mineral nutrient quality to it, but it's still fairly depleted, though I did amend it last year, so there should be some worthwhile nutrients in it. But now, having done a much better job digging here and sifting, so that our trench nice and smooth at the bottom. I've got out all the refuse, extra grass and rocks that I could pick out and see that were significant. Bring it up for you to see a little bit closer. I'll have to bring it back, I think, at the moment with the, you can see into our trench there, how we're doing. Now what I'm going to do is I need to add compost on the bottom layer. It's the same technique. So having got a nice several inches of loose soil at the bottom, I'm going to put in a few inches of compost. Maybe not quite 50-50. But that's just because having not had a garden here before, this is just our second year, and I didn't add any compost last year. And there was really a dearth of organic matter that inhibited the growth. The plants sprung up well last year, but they didn't grow very well later in their life cycle because they were depleted of fuel, as it were, with the organic material in the soil missing. So we're correcting that problem this year. That's one of the best things about gardens is you can do little improvements every year. It's actually a major improvement we're doing, which is we're really transforming this into a whole new garden. But in future years, it'll be much less work to actually maintain this garden now that we've done this. So now I have a layer of the native soil that's nice and loose. I have a nice loose layer now of compost on the top. And then what I'm going to do, I can bring this forward a little bit so you can see better and not lose the connection by the grace of God. Please help. So I'm going to take the spade and the technique that I use to mix, and you can do it any way you want, that ultimately mixes up the soil together. But I want to blend the two. But the easiest and most efficient way, since I've been doing it for quite a long way, we've got 1,600 square feet here. And I always have the shovel in front of me and the digging face toward me. I first go forward, and as I go forward with the back of the shovel leading the way, as it were, the soil doesn't move horizontally very much. It's mostly just going down vertically because I've got two layers that I'm trying to blend together. And I'll go up and back. And then we go around the side. And then I do pull the soil back towards me using the front layer of the spade. The digging part of the spade, I use that when I'm pulling it towards me. So I never change the position of the shovel. I either go, but I'm going either forward or backwards. I go backwards in the last one. As I pull the soil, it's going much more horizontally, and you're getting much more movement of the soil. And when you do it over and over and over again, it's actually a very efficient way to mix. So I go just every couple of inches or every inch or so, I'm pushing down to commingle the two layers together. And around the side or edge, kind of in the center. And then I pull it towards me, and hopefully you can see it, but it's actually get much more movement, but it's more horizontal than vertical. So I first mixing it vertically, and then we're mixing it horizontally, and that ends up with a pretty even blend. And even better, I'm now going to add amendments to the soil, and then we'll mix it even a second time. Each layer will get mixed twice, and then you get a uniform blend of soil. Now, just smoothing it out and making it relatively even. You're getting a little extra stick. Hopefully you can see I'll try to come up quick, but losing the connection. But now we've got already much better looking soil, just with mixing in the compost. But we're going to do much more. So all the soils are depleted because of sin. They're depleted from the life-giving nutrients and the life-giving microbes as a consequence of sin. And but the scriptures tell us that Jesus is the rock who never changes. He also told a parable how he was the rock that would be crushed to powder for us, for our sin, if we would fall on the rock and be broken. And so if our minds need to understand how Christ, the rock, was broken for us in order to restore our minds back to rightness, what we need to actually add to the soil is rocks that are crushed to powder. That's exactly what we have here. We have a special blend here of rocks for agricultural purposes. And we are going to add it here to our soil. I'm adding a dusting. It's in a flour gradation. This batch is a little moist. It must have rained right before they sent it. A little bit drier and powdery, but if you touch it, it feels. And the key minerals that the soil needs. Here I also have some azomite, which is another kind of mineral that is mined in the western United States. That is very beneficial for building soil structure and for adding soil needs, plants need. Here I have a different kind of rock dust or stone dust that is actually a carbonized, and it's more of almost like pellets. So it will be a longer term release in the soil. We'll also have to put some good carbon in the soil. And then here, in addition to the regular compost that I have, which is actually, by the way, all happens to be plant-based compost. It's from branches from a tree cutting company, and does not have any animal products in it. Not I would if I knew a good farm, organic farm that was truly following principles, I would consider using compost from their animals as well. But I think I'm happy with plant-based compost. It's beautiful. This actually is composted worm casting, which will help to promote the growth of worms and also serve as feed for them. We want lots of worms to help get air and nitrogen into our soil. And then I have a little bit of kelp. I only put a tiny little bit in the bottom, mostly because I'm almost out. You want less in the bottom layer and more in the next layer and the most in the top layer of the kelp. Then I have a compost tea here, which I've had in some ways going continuously for several weeks, but I used it up almost to the bottom, and then I add more water and more microbial inoculants. Here in the microbial inoculants that we have in the soil, help to turn the inorganic minerals into a bioavailable forms that the plant can uptake. I also have really good Baja sea salt. It's a highly mineralized form of sea salt. Replace the missing trace minerals. We saw that was also a biblical principle, that ye are the salt of the earth. The salt that's lost its savor is no good, but we've got salt that still has its savor. It's healthy, life-giving minerals that God designed for our good. And it also helps to increase the electric potential of the soil, because we want our microbes to actually produce electricity in the soil. That's what we're hoping to promote. That stimulates the plant growth. So have that from the Inspired Council. And of course, the water is a symbol of the spirit, and the microbes are a symbol of the work of the angels in the plan of salvation. And all of them bring together, showing the plan of salvation in objects, how we can perfectly, beautifully for the soil, just as God is seeking to restore our mind through spiritual lessons. I've got many other things in my compost tea. I've got some Epsom salt and some stone and the azomite and the kelp. And I've got mycorrhizal fungus, help live symbiotically in the isosphere, in the root structure, help surface area of taking in nutrients and a general activator of uh, that help to make the minerals more available to the microbes and the roots. So I'm mixing again, the same technique, first pushing down with the back of the shovel, going forward, and I go around the edge and around the edge, hole, and then I pull it towards me and get a lot of nice horizontal motion to mix the soil. Now I have a beautiful layer that I put in several of those are maybe layer before I mix it again. So I have a fully mineralized and microbial rich with organic matter soil now that is beautiful and perfect for almost all types of plants that we would grow in our garden. And now we would repeat the process. I've got these 2 buckets of soil that I've sifted through the process, and I and how to do it. I have other videos where I go through the principles in more detail, and also in scriptures and the spirit of prophecy quotes to support it. And also called Living Soils. You can find here on our YouTube channel. Playlist on the health message that this will be connected with. Just picking out some of the bigger stones that I'm seeing now that I've poured out this sifted soil. You know, some of the stones still get through the sifting process, and that's all right. I don't want to get rid of all of them. They're actually ultimately break down and provide minerals as well, but I don't want the bigger ones as much as possible. All right, so now I've smoothed out that layer of the native soil that I put back in, and now I want to put more compost, another layer of compost together with it. Finished off that bucket. Got another one. Ready to go. There. That we're amending. Well, that's beautiful lessons here. Often we try to just plant the seed of the word without having done any work to prepare the soil. When actually the soil preparation is what's most important. And though it takes extra time, it's worth the extra time, this loving care, where we are thinking on God's principles and looking to Him and trusting Him. Actually, when we understand it rightly. So here I'm going to mix the layer, the two top layers here, one of native soil and one of compost. And organic material. Go around the edge. And then pull it back towards me. Down one side and pull it back towards me down the other side. And now I've got a nice mixed medium here of soil. This last one I was rushing a little bit. I really would have finished this whole section earlier, but I had to leave to go to camp meeting in New York. And I had just a little bit of a 14-foot section left here, so I did it in two sections of 7 feet, roughly. But I don't usually do sections that big. I usually do this technique with sections of more about 4 or 5 feet at a time, but whatever suits your and what's good for you. Of course, having a helper speeds the process. I'm taking on linking it. So now having there and blended the two, then I'm going to amend it again here. If this is a good broad spectrum, fine flower, stone dust that I got Vermont. Excellent company, has excellent products and free shipping. So even though they're heavy, things that you're buying, 50 pounds or more, might be a box, but yeah, the free shipping, that doesn't matter. So then my azomite, and I've got my St. George's black carbonized, a little bit more granular texture than the fine powder of the other rock stuff. And then here is our composted worm casting. blend that in, and we'll increase the amount of kelp here in that layer. And of course, I've also got kelp already blended in the water in the compost tea. Well, I let ferment typically overnight. Each time I'll reach the end of the day, I'll fill it back up with water, and I'll add some more microbial inoculants and maybe a cup of organic sugar, or not a cup, probably about a quarter of a cup, just to give it some fuel for fermentation. And I'll add, of course, some more of powdered rock dust, the azomite, the kelp, the microbial inoculants, the inoculants of the mycorrhizal. Amazing. We talk about that in other studies and talks, so I won't get into that now. Just about done here. Try to get most of the layer. We have some of the liquid here. Again, it's all billions and trillions of microbes. Double quickly as every half hour to 2 hours, depending on the type of microbe. If you let it go for 24 hours, you're going to have a very microbe-rich compost tea. And it's also got the liquid, really helps. And trace minerals from the sea salt and the salt, of course, and the water together both dramatically increase the electric potential of the soil that we're looking for. Blending this second layer, same technique. Having added the amendments, and the second time I'm blending this second layer. And then we're going to repeat the process for the final top layer. Now, these biblical principles, all this comes from and has been demonstrated to be highly effective at growing healthy, nutrient-dense plants in our garden that can help bring healing miracles when we cooperate with God. Not just organic, we are going for nutrient density to restore us back to a Garden of Eden garden, and to demonstrate that we can actually do this technique that I'm showing you. It's very simple. We're just digging a row and adding in some compost to amend the quality of the base soil itself and the organic matter, and then we're adding soil amendments with nutrients. And we could do this with any soil in the world, just like God can restore any broken mind in the world and bring it back to rightness. And people will marvel. We're going to get beautiful, healthy plants with strong immune systems that when we eat, we'll get healthy and have strong immune systems. So there's my last layer of the native soil. And one more layer of compost. Roughly even it out as well. And 2 roughly uniform layers of native soil and compost that I'll then now blend together. And going forward, shovel backwards. Has the vertical mixing go along the edge, so it's all incorporated. And then pulling it toward me with the front of the shovel gets the rapid horizontal movement and mixing. Complete process back and forth. A little bit. Shovel, and then with my hand. And now, it's me. The final layer ready for amending. Finely powdered rock dust. Probably might be hard to see, but I'm just putting basically a layer that makes it essentially visible. I'm not basically, it's probably about a quarter cup or so. I would say between a quarter and half a cup. I want to get enough to really fully mineralize it. You also don't want to use too much, not because you don't have too many minerals, but you want to stretch it economically across your garden. So here's the azomite, also maybe about a quarter cup in the 7-foot section. I'd be using less if I was doing 4 or 5-foot section. Here's my carbonized granular rock dust. And they have nice precise mineral content of each of these rock dust on Rock Dust Local website. And here is the composted worm castings. I guess I should probably be clear. I don't have any relationship, financial or otherwise, with any of these products or companies that I'm sharing, and this is just what I happen to be using. You can use whatever companies you want or whatever others I probably would use if I had more resources, but I don't. But this is a very actually reasonably priced way to really fully mineralize your soil. Here's the kelp finally. It's not section. I would have liked a little bit more of that, but the compost tea. Give it a quick stir each time because I'll put a few handfuls of actual compost in the bottom of the pot to also add the microbes. And I want to give it a nice stir before I start pouring it in. Soak this layer. With scoops of the compost tea. More. This is our last section of the garden. Will 3 extra. Bless it with these nutrients. We need the rest of the bucket. We're at the end. Normally I would be preserving the bucket and using already the existing kind of mother, as it were, of the compost tea at the base of the pot of the bucket, and then just refill it more amendments and let it then ferment again overnight before I use it again the next day. And you can keep a wonderful compost tea going all through your planting season. All right. Well, that's the demonstration of my modified double dig method. Well, actually, here I just have to finish mixing it. I've done. I've added those amendments. Yeah, one last mixing. Go through. And first the vertical mixing, shovel backward, down the edge. And then the horizontal pulling towards us. Okay. My hand, smooth it out, fine. Fine. Blend to the last section. This becomes all one row. And now it's time we can plant. And that will have to be for another video. This one is on biblical soil amendments that produce some of the best results that we could hope for in our garden as a witness for him and your family and your friends and your neighbors and the church members will marvel. God blesses. Meet again soon by his grace. Amen.